The Milwaukee Brewers have a new man in charge. President of Baseball Operations, Matt Arnold, has taken the reins in hopes of keeping the winning tradition in Milwaukee relevant. How has his first offseason gone in Milwaukee? Let's ask former Brewer and former co-host of this very show, Vinny Rottino, that same question. Plus, do the Milwaukee Brewers have an under-the-radar prospect that we have not yet discussed? And finally, could the Milwaukee Brewers do something with Christian Yelich? Yes, I'm talking about a trade. Stay tuned and find out next. You are Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Brewers fans, welcome back into the Locked On Brewers podcast. Today's show is brought to you by the amazing, awesome, great folks over at BetOnline.net, the number one source for all your betting info, stats, news, and of course, analysis. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Brewers your first listen each and every day. Do not forget that we are free and available on all podcast platforms. Yes, that's right. Apple, Google, Spotify. There's probably about 50 other ones. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on Twitter at Locked On Brewers. And I did create a Facebook. I've said it before. I'll keep hammering it down until you guys hit that like button. Follow us on Facebook at Locked On Brewers Podcast. Get all of our episodes. Get all of our content right on your Facebook feed each and every morning. And also do not forget, I'm going to keep harping on this one as well, folks. We are 298 subscribers away for 1,000. It's not like anybody here is counting. On YouTube, just go ahead and search Locked On Brewers at the top. Of course, I am your host, Brandon Snide. Like you, I am a lifelong diehard Milwaukee Brewers fan, recording this podcast just minutes away from American Family Field. You know it. I know it as home to our Milwaukee Brewers. You can find me on Twitter if you would like, at Brandon_Snide. And again, it's that time of year. We're out shopping. We're out visiting. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you letting me steal a few of your minutes to talk about our Milwaukee Brewers. As always, the Locked On Brewers is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Look, unfortunately, after the Brewers fell short in the postseason for the first time in 5 years, there were some major changes at the top, which included David Stearns stepping down as he was replaced by his good buddy, Matt Arnold, who has been at his side since 2015. What better way to help filter through some of these major changes? Why don't we ask a guy who has been in the clubhouse? He's battle tested. He's proven. He's the man of the hour. We're going to welcome in to the show a familiar voice and certainly a familiar face for you Brewers fans. Former co-host of this very show and former Milwaukee Brewer, Vinny Rottino. Vinny, good day. How is it going?
Brandon, thanks for having me, man. It's I've been enjoying the show. You do a great job. So thanks for having me on.
You don't, Vinny. It's okay. You don't have to kiss up to me. I'm the wrong guy. I appreciate it though. I appreciate it though. You know, we're working through this. You know, picking up a podcast, picking up after what you and Dom have created. It's not the easiest task in the world. We're working at it. We're picking up a podcast in the offseason. We're finding things to talk about. And the Milwaukee Brewers, Vinny, have given us some things to talk about. And October 27th was when David Stearns stepped down. I don't know about you. It caught me off guard. I wasn't caught off guard that he was leaving Milwaukee, or I guess he's not currently leaving Milwaukee. I figured it was going to eventually come, but were you surprised at the timing of it?
I was surprised by the timing of it. Look, I mean, David Stearns did a phenomenal job as the lead, baseball ops guy for the Milwaukee Brewers, and he did a great job ever since he took over for Doug Melvin, for Gord Ash. Back, what was it, 2015? I mean, 15, they contended a lot earlier than we all thought that they would. 2017, I mean, they were rebuilding 15 and 16 for sure, and then 17, all of a sudden they kind of came out of nowhere and almost made it to the playoffs, and that was on the heels of that Tyler Thornburg deal where they added about four impactful major league players out of that deal, including Travis Shaw, who ended up hitting 30 home runs that year. I mean, he did a great job, and then the Brewers are in the middle of a window to win, and so then he is stepping down, and it's a little bit strange, I guess is the best word to describe it. But he has his reasons, and the Brewers are moving on to Matt Arnold, and Matt's going to do a great job. He's going to, and I think that's where you're leading me next. But, they have a good guy. They have a great guy, a smart baseball man at the helm at this point.
Yeah, I don't have any ill feelings towards former baseball president of operations, David Stearns. Look, I tell people when I first started this podcast last week, I said, you believe it or not, you got to take a step back, understand that there has been some letdowns. You wanted to go to the World Series in 2018. 2020 was kind of a weird year. 2021, you had a letdown offensively against the Atlanta Braves. And obviously expectations were shortened in 2022, but this is the golden age right now of Milwaukee Brewers baseball. I get it. 1982 was fun. There wasn't a sustained success like there is now. And you're talking about Hall of Fame type players into the Milwaukee Brewers organization. You're talking about ownership that has tried to elevate this team in the free agency into the trade market. We've had some low points of that. We've had some high points of that. Remember going out and getting a Mike Moustakas in the middle of the year? It was phenomenal. You almost go to the World Series that year. You lose Josh Hader last year. So there's been ups and downs, but that's really with any organization. I mean, what as Brewers fans should we expect, Vinny, from Matt Arnold? Now I get it. He's been with David Stearns. He's been his right-hand man since 2015. Is he the same type of, going to be the same type of operator that David was? Is he going to sit back? His first offseason's been multiple trades, and he shipped away the two best hitters from a year ago.
Yeah. So I think you're going to see a similar approach to a David Stearns in terms of, look, David Stearns traded away Josh Hader, right? And then in the middle of a season where the Brewers were up 4 games in the NL Central, he traded away Josh Hader for 2 prospects. And he thought he was going to replenish the bullpen after he traded Hader. Just didn't work out, right? So, but those are the types of moves that you already have seen from Matt Arnold. And like you said, Brandon, you said he traded away Colton Wong, one of the top hitters from the team last year, and then Hunter Renfroe as well. And so, and what are you getting back? You're getting back guys that need a bounce back. You're getting back guys that have control. You're getting back guys that have a lot of potential. And the Brewers know how to tap into that potential. They know how to tap into those bounce back type of candidates. And so I think you're gonna see those types of moves a lot. And why? Because when you add control and you add controllable years to a player's contract into the team's kind of control over the player, then all of a sudden you can be patient with that player. You can allow that player to struggle a little bit. And what better place to do that than Milwaukee, meaning right. It's a smaller market team. The fans, the best fans in baseball, best fans in the world, because they kind of understand like players have to grind through some struggles in order to get to their ceiling. The Brewers have done just a great job of that. I mean, Willy Adames hitting under 200 when he was with the Rays. I mean, talk about what an acquisition right there. Yeah. So I think the Brewers are probably, and Matt Arnold in particular, is probably going to try and, hit home runs like that in trades.
So you talked about those 2 trades. There's some glaring holes, I think, within this roster. I think if you look around Major League Baseball, Vinny, you could say that almost about every team outside of maybe, I don't know, San Diego, who someone's still going to have to explain to me how that money is operated down there, or over there. They're just below Milwaukee or above Milwaukee, I guess, in market size. Like, come on. 2 $400 million contracts offered to Turner and Aaron Judge. I'll digress on it. I don't understand where it's coming from, but what should we expect from Matt Arnold as far as going into this offseason? Now there's tons of prospects, and we'll talk about more later on in the show, and exciting ones too. I mean, top prospects throughout Major League Baseball. Is he a guy where he looks at, let's for example, let's look at the catcher position. Is Victor Caratini your everyday catcher, or is that something where you see Matt Arnold going out and saying, okay, it's obviously a position of need. We're going to go ahead and address that. We're going to go out and maybe we go out and get Vasquez. Maybe we go out and trade. Name a player.
Sean Murphy would be great.
That's
right?
Yeah. I mean, is that something you see him doing? You see him being aggressive, or do you see him sitting back and being like, let's just see what we got and then go?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer this question in not such a clear black or white way. I think that because I think what David Stearns and Matt Arnold have done so well in building this team and building the sustained success that they have is they've made just a ton of really good bets along the way. And they kick the tires on every player. Look, if there's the right deal that makes sense for a Sean Murphy, where you're giving up, God forbid, like a Jackson Trio. I don't think that will
don't
be
do
on the
that.
table.
Yeah.
But for some top end prospects to get him, if it makes sense to them and to it's all about risk versus reward, right? So if they can work out something for some of these top end guys and it makes sense for them and they have trade currency then to perhaps add later on towards the trade deadline, if that's what the plan is going forward, then they will pull the trigger on that. They've been proven to do so. Look, Christian Yelich trade, right? So they traded 4 high-end prospects, very high. Monte Harrison was a very high-end prospect. Lewis Brinson was a top.
I think he was their
prospect.
Was he their number one?
He was their number one. He was
at
a
the
top
time.
10 prospect in all of baseball at the time. And so everyone's, even as a scout, I was like, and Ison Diaz was a top prospect.
Yeah.
I think he was within the top 100. So, and everyone was like, whoa, what did they give up to get Christian Yelich, this guy? And so look, good bets. And, if they have enough trade currency, they're going to pull the trigger on it. And I think that the team has proven that they will do that. And then they'll also go the other way, as we saw in the Josh Hader deal. So, I mean, again, it's a bunch of good bets that they try to make things work out in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I've said it before and I'll keep saying on the show, I'm going to give him time. It's not a guy where I'm going to hold his feet to the fire. Mark Ignacio, that's a whole nother conversation that we could have. 2 questions before we change topics here. Give me your quick thoughts on the Rule 5 selection last night. Gus Varland seems like a guy where he could be maybe a middle reliever going into 2023, high 90s. He definitely finished 2022 on a higher note than he started it. But what are your thoughts on Gus Varland?
So the scouting report on him is, it's the big fastball, it's the developing secondaries, and it's a little bit of control stuff. So it reminds me, just in terms of listening to that scouting report and reading that scouting report, it reminds me of a Jundel Gustave, who the Brewers turned into a pretty good reliever at times, right? So Absolutely. He did struggle at times as well. So I think Chris Hook gets his hands around these guys. Jim Henderson gets his hands around these guys, and they can develop pitchers with the best of them.
I know I said we wouldn't hold his feet to the fire, but I'm going to put you on the spot here, Vinny, real quick. It's been, what are we going on? Today's December 9th. We're going on about not even 2 months into the offseason. A letter grade for Matt Arnold. And this is we're just having fun. It's the offseason, folks. We're just having fun. We're just creating conversation here for you on the Locked On Brewers podcast, your only daily Brewers podcast, I may add. What is your letter grade thus far in the moves that he has made or the moves that he has not made?
Yeah, look, you're going to put my feet to the fire here with this question, Brandon. And my goodness, it's too early to tell. It's too early to tell. We gotta figure out what these guys can bring to the table. I mean, look, here's what I'll say about this.
Okay.
And I'm not going to give you a letter grade because look, I actually think
sorry, folks. I tried.
No, but this is my reasoning, and I get it. I get where you're at. I get where fans are at with and I read the Twitter and stuff like that as to the moves that he's made to get rid of Renfroe and to get rid of Wong. Look, at the end of the day, they have also opened up roster spots and at bats for a guy like Bryce Terang, and so maybe Bryce Terang is all of a sudden the next heir apparent. The second baseman that's going to be there, and maybe he signs a team-friendly deal or something like that, and he's there for the next 10 years. And this is a guy that it's like, oh, Colton Wong, who? You know what I mean? So, we just don't know. And then the same thing goes for Hunter Renfroe. I loved both of those players. I loved them both. I thought they were both winning players. But again, it opens up the opportunity for perhaps a Joey Weimer, for perhaps more ABs, more consistent ABs, for all those top-end outfielders that they have at the top of their prospect list in the Milwaukee Brewers have. So just look at it that way before you hold my feet to the fire, Brad. That's such a cop-out answer, but I gave you a good reason why I did.
It's you could tell you work in radio and TV. That was about as professional gets, Vinny, and I appreciate it. And folks, it's just we're just having fun with it. I've given Matt Arnold plenty of time before I even have anything to say about him. I trust him. He's been around. He knows how the Milwaukee Brewers are going to operate. He understands how Mark Ignacio is going to operate. And more importantly, he knows where this fan base and where we stand as fans and the passion we have But there have been discussions ongoing amongst the fan base what the Milwaukee Brewers can or cannot do financially. As you just heard me try to press on Vinny Rottino, former Brewer, former co-host of this show, what man Arnold has done thus far. Is there a solution? Maybe there is a situation where the Brewers could offload one of their former MVPs. We'll discuss that. But before we move on, can we pause the pod for just a second? Vinny won't mind. I promise you, if we could just pause. Okay, we're paused. Good. I'm the creator of the podcast, so I guess we could do that. That's great because you guys got to try this. And I'm talking about Built Bar's new reimagined flavors, the best protein bar, I promise you, that you will ever taste. They sent me a box of these and they are absolutely phenomenal flavors. Cookie dough topper. Okay. Doesn't get any better than that. Coconut brownie bar. Yes. Give me 3. Coconut brownie topper. I'll take 4 more. White chocolate peppermint granola. It's Built's take on the granola bar, but it is so much more filling and still insanely tasted. And for the season that we're in currently, Christmas right around the corner, candy cane brownie. Built bars are built like biting into the universe's most delicious donut. First off, for anyone who hasn't tried Built Bars before, they are literally the best tasting protein bars ever built. They are incredible. I'm telling you right now, if you haven't tried them, you are missing out. They're all unbelievable, and they're all so different. You can just order a mixed box and try all 5 flavors for yourself. If you do this, go to Built.com, get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. Built, you gotta try this. Thank you for making Locked On Brewers your first listen each and every day. Again, guys, we are the only daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. For your next listen, though, I highly recommend you check out Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. I want to reach back, Brewers fans. Do me a favor, reach back into those memory banks. Recall a time when you remember watching TV, maybe you're listening on the radio, and watching Christian Yelich smoke a ball right off his bat. I'm talking about knocking in 100 RBIs a year, 40-plus home runs. It was fun. It was amazing memories. Wasn't even that long ago, believe it or not, but something has happened, and all that's up for debate. I'm not going to debate exactly what did or did not happen. But what I do want to debate is where he currently stands as a Milwaukee Brewer. I'm talking about his contract situation, years left on his deal. Vinny, what do the Brewers do with Christian Yelich? Do they cross their hands and just hope for the best and see if there's a possibility that when these prospects come up, maybe they could send him off in a trade, as crazy as that may sound, after he just won an MVP, what should have been probably back-to-back MVPs, if not for the knee injury?
Well, so I think, a trade isn't very realistic just because of the years and money left on the deal, and then the amount of production that he has put up in the last 3 years. So it's a 2-win player right now. So that's or 2.5-win player, meaning he was just above league average in terms of an everyday player and what they should be producing. And it was a little bit over a 700 OPS. He got on base a ton, 4th in walks. He was 25th in the league compared to the other offensive players in the league for on-base percentage. Obviously, there's a bunch of guys that were excluded from that for not having enough at-bats. But, I mean, he was like 355 on base. So, I mean, the guy was getting on base a ton. He had a bounce back in terms of the level of production from 2021 to 2022. He just was a better offensive producer from those 2 years. Now, I don't think we'll ever see the same version of Christian Yelich that we saw from 18 and 19. I think the balls are different. I think that affected him mentally, and it affected a lot of players. It affected Francisco Lindor in 2021, affected Cody Bellinger, affected a number of players. Like, the balls are different. They're not traveling as far, and so that affects you with your confidence. When you hit a fly out to the wall or to the warning track, and then last year they were home runs. So yeah, I don't know what he has to do to get back to what he was doing in 18 and 19. I don't think I've been racking my brain for 3 years on that same question, Brandon. Mm-hmm. A trade isn't very likely because the Brewers are going to have to eat a lot of that money in order to make that deal happen. And then maybe a team gambles and says, okay, maybe he gets back to that a little bit closer back to that, and then they can kind of buy low, basically. I just don't see the Brewers eating a ton of money and doing that. I just don't see the likelihood of that happening. So what do they have in Christian Yelich? They have a leadoff guy, and they have a guy that's making a lot of money, and he at least has to produce what he did last year in order for them to totally not just have a sunk contract, as we've seen some other teams in the past, like an Eric Hosmer or Will Myers, kind of played way below their value showed in their contracts that they signed with the Padres. So long story short, I don't see a trade happening, I don't know what he's got to do to get back. So I didn't really give you a great answer there, Brandon, but that's my take, and that's been my take the last 3 years on Christian Yelich.
Yeah, and Vinny, it's a tough situation because you're not not going to trade that contract. You're not going to be able to eat that, especially if you're Milwaukee.
Right.
He's also a guy where he had such a weird year a year ago. He had the highest amount of walks in his career, but he also had the highest amount of strikeouts in his career. Do those correlate with each other? If they do, how does a guy go from walking the most? He's obviously seeing the ball well, right? I mean, if you're walking 88 times is the highest in his career. Before that was 2019, where he almost won the MVP at 80. So he walked 88 times last year. He struck out 162 times last year. That is by far the most in his career. I mean, what's the explanation between those two?
So what do you make of that? You make the fact that, okay, in 2018 and 2019, when he was Superman, he was making, he was waiting for one pitch in an at bat and getting it and then hitting it out for a home run or a double or a single, right? So now he's getting that pitch and he still has that great eye, but he's fouling it off, right? So he's still got the great eye. He's walking, balls are, just outside of the zone, and he's taking them, but then those pitches that he was hitting in the past are now foul balls. So he's going deeper into counts and then he's striking out more. That's my take on that. Again, I think the timing is a little bit late. We saw flashes where, he hit the longest, 500-foot home run in Coors Field. I don't care where you're playing. If a 500-foot home run is impressive. So it's still in there, that raw talent that we saw. It's still in there, the ability to drive the ball. He just hasn't been able to tap into it consistently and have that consistent timing with pitches. And pitching has just gotten better too, Brandon. Let's not forget about that. And so again, I think he's a guy that just really wears on himself, really grinds on himself. If he doesn't, succeed to that level, I think he's just that kind of guy. He's a great guy. He's a great guy. I played with him a little bit in spring training in 2012. It was
humble brag. I love it.
Yeah, actually it was 2000. I'm sorry, it's 2015. I did 2015 when I was with the Marlins. But great dude, and he's just one of those guys that probably is putting a little too much pressure on himself to not perform and then have that big contract for the small market Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it right there at the end. Like, he's putting it on himself because you can see it. I mean, grounding out to, a soft grounder to second with a guy on second or third with 2 outs, and he barely makes contact. He's slamming his helmet down. He's usually a calm, collective guy, California cool dude. But yeah, it's getting to him, and I feel bad for him because I remember exactly where I was. I can tell you exactly where I was when he signed that contract extension, when it was made public. And could he have made more money elsewhere? I still think he could have. I should say, I think the Dodgers would have paid him double than what Milwaukee did. And he put it into Milwaukee, and he put his trust in Milwaukee. It's frustrating as a fan, number one, but you feel for a guy like that because you can tell the work that he's putting in. And look, that injury that he sustained in Chicago, I believe it was in Chicago, with the knee, the foul ball off the kneecap, that doesn't happen very often. And it happened to him, and it's rattled him. And then you go to the back injury, and I'm a guy who suffers back injuries. Is that something he's going to be able to get past? Is he going to be able to get past those injuries?
Yeah, that's a thing. He's such a long levered guy, and you watch him run, and he's such a smooth runner. So he's a dynamic athlete. And so anytime you have such a long frame, you are a little bit more apt to have, especially the back. So I think it's going to be something he's always going to battle. And I think in 2020, just to add to his struggles a bit, in 2020 with no fans, I think it's a guy who's coming off that great year in 2019, and then 2020, like this weird situation with no fans. I think that affected him. And then In 2021, he battled the injury stuff. I thought, look, in 2021, I thought he was back. In spring training, he was just lacing balls to the opposite field. All of a sudden, they introduced this dead ball. I don't know. I just think that it kind of snowballed on him. It got in his head, and he's never been able to recover. And it's been now 2 years since that 2020 season, and I just think he's dug himself into such a hole mentally at this point that I don't know if he will bounce back, but we can all hope. I mean, again, it's still in there. But I think we're all just a little bit reluctant to believe it at this point.
Yeah. And again, this team's they're going to ride with him, more than likely
right
to the end. I mean, unless there's a team that swoops in, I wanted to present that question to you because there's a lot of question marks. And speaking of question marks going into 2023, there's more question marks. Will the Milwaukee Brewers be able to extend, let's say, Willy Adames? We already talked about Corbin Burns on this podcast before. We're going to talk about Brandon Woodruff. Vinny, there's this underlying anxiousness amongst the fan base in Milwaukee. Again, the theme of my first week here has been more questions than answers because that's just the reality. But that's the offseason. When you're in the offseason, you're always going to ask questions. There's always going to be, what can we do to be better? How can we look to improve? How can we look to make trades? How can we make sign free agents, the winter meetings? Everybody else is signing somebody, tossing out $400 million, $368 million. The Brewers are sitting idle, and that's okay for now. But again, there are some questions, and those questions remain with a few of the current players. Now, I've said my piece. I've said it before about Corbin Burns. And no, guys, those that have that, harped on me after I said it, it hasn't changed. You pay that guy. You don't let him leave the American Family Field in another uniform. That's just my take. But I want to take a look at some other major names on this team, Vinny, which includes really the pulse of the heartbeat of this team in Willy Adames and starting pitcher Brandon Woodruff. What does the market say really about an extension for a guy like Willy Adames?
For Willy, okay, so last year was a 4.5 win player, meaning when you talk about WAR. So this is a player that's an all-star caliber player year in and year out. I mean, we saw what he can do with the glove. Yep. We saw what he can do with the bat. And when he gets hot, my goodness, he can carry a team, and he's continuing to develop too. So you're looking at least, I mean, look, Dansby Swanson wants $25 million, right? And he's a shortstop, and he had a really great season for the Braves. He was a 4 or 5 win player, so he played a little bit better than Willy did, but that was his only year that he played well. So he's looking at $25 million a year, and then you look at a Trey Turner, 29 years old, 11 years, $300 million. Xander Bogaerts, I mean, 30 years old, 11 years, $280 million. So what does a Willy Adames want, and what can he command on the market? Right now, I think that's what his agent is probably kind of having him look at. But here's a guy that loves Milwaukee. Again, I think players do fall in love with this place, and maybe they will stay for a bargain. Now, what does a bargain look like for Willy Adames?
Yeah,
is it 10 years? $300 million. I mean, again, if Dansby Swanson is going to get $25 million in this market, for whatever years, I mean, that's kind of mind blowing to me that he's going to command that much money, considering how well he did not play in the years prior to this last year. He's a pretty good player before that, but again, it's just like, wow, the money is staggering. I just don't know if the Brewers can or are willing to take on another deal in that kind of dollar range. But if there's anybody that I would be confident in doing so, it would be a Willy Adames, because this is a guy, I equate him to a Prince Fielder. Prince Fielder was the best player on the Milwaukee Brewers in the early 2000s, right? And he was also the hardest worker and the guy that wanted to win the most. So he was a grinder. So when your superstar is a grinder who hits 50 home runs in a year, but also sprints down the line on ground balls back to the pitcher, and just sets the tone for a winning culture for your team. To me, that's who Willy Adames is. He's the same kind of guy. You gotta try to somehow retain him, but again, it's just the nature of the beast of where the Brewers are in where they can't necessarily compete with some of these other clubs and the dollars they can throw around.
See, and I'm trying to, Vinny, I've taken over. It's only been a week. I'm trying to change that mentality amongst Brewers fans because I see it so much on we're a small market. We can't do this. We can't do that. We got to trade this guy while we still can. I hate that mentality. I understand there's some validity to it. But if San Diego, who is a market above us, is offering multiple 400-year contracts, and this is reportedly to Aaron Judge and Trey Turner prior to them signing where their respective teams are now, I think the Brewers can find a way. They shelled in 2.4 million fans through the gates last year, what put them right in the middle of Major League Baseball. I want fans to demand more, and this isn't a shot at Mark Attanasio, but this fan base deserves a team. And as a Milwaukee Bucks fan, if you listen to this podcast, you're a Brewers fan, I guarantee you're probably a Bucks fan. We were told for the longest time we couldn't have a championship because we weren't in LA. We weren't in New York. We weren't in Texas or Florida or one of these big markets. That mentality in Major League Baseball has got to shift a little bit too. I expect more, demand more. And it goes with guys like Brandon Woodruff and Willy Adames. Willy Adames made $4.6 million last year. He's projected to go up to 9.5 in arbitration this year. That tells you the type of guy he is. That tells you the type of player he is. Not only is he one of your best players, but he's a guy, and I said it when we brought onto the segment, he's a glue guy. He's a heartbeat of this team. I mean, when he was gone for, I think it was like 3 weeks in June of last year, I mean, you felt that. I think the Brewers felt they were dead. Like there was just no energy. Willy Adames comes back and boom, you snap your fingers and the energy's back. He's out on the field. You feel that. And I know for you as a former player, if you could just wrap around that, we'll finish up with your thoughts on it. What does a guy like that do to that spark? What does he add to not only the clubhouse, but on the field?
It's you can't even describe what that is, the value. You can't even put a number on what the value is for guys like that. I mean, you said it, Brandon. Glue guys are irreplaceable, and you definitely want to try to retain those guys. I mean, Willy Adames obviously is that. Brandon Woodruff is that. Corbin Burns is that type of guy. Rowdy Tellez even seems to be, a win first guy, a team first guy. So, I mean, you want to try to retain as many of those guys as you can and just build your team with just a bunch of those guys. And it seems like the Brewers do a great job of acquiring those guys. Now, as far as retaining them, I hear what you're saying, Brandon. I definitely do. But like,
you want to fight me about it, Vinny? Go ahead.
No, I don't. I just don't know. And I think, like, at the end of the day, too, you have to remember, like, the San Diego Padres, I don't know how they're doing it either.
I need to know. I'm not calling for an investigation, but we got to figure it out.
But think about this, though, too. The Eric Hosmer deal and the Will Myers deal were train wrecks, right? Those are bad contracts. Those are bad extensions. Those are bad free agent signings, whatever. I think Will Myers was an extension and Hosmer was a free agent.
Yep.
And those actually set them back as an organization for a few years. And if AJ Preller he's got great scouts that work for him, and he's a great scout himself. So, I mean, they just continually replenish their system with top tier prospects in either via trade or through international signings. So just remember, and the Brewers do too. The Brewers actually have a competitive advantage both on the amateur scouting side of things, on the international scouting side of things, and the pro scouting side of things. So I'll just say, like, he continually replenished his system with these top end prospects, and then he went out and traded for Juan Soto as well, right? So he had the currency to make that deal. As far as the actual real life currency to sign these guys, and offer an Aaron Judge $400 million, I don't know. Something different going on maybe in San Diego.
And they got Machado.
And
too.
They got Machado.
Like,
so
Darvish.
I mean, they have a ton of guys. I don't. Joe Musgrove, did he not get extended?
I believe he's still. Yeah, he's still there. Well, Clevenger went to the White Sox.
Right.
But yeah, I think Musgrove is still there. And again, I'm not saying that. I'm not calling anybody cheap. I'm just saying, as fans, we got to demand more because we deserve it. And for the longest time, Vinny, you know this, you're a Wisconsin kid. Like, people said the Bucks would never do anything. And of course, I understand you have a Giannis that helps propel things. And I'm not saying Corbin Burns is the Giannis, but he's damn good. And he is one of the best pitchers, not only in Major League Baseball, but I could probably sit up here and if I did enough research, make the case that he's the best Brewer pitcher ever. I mean, again, that's just an oversight. Maybe I'm, building that up a little bit more. He's up there.
Him and Woodruff are definitely.
They gotta be. And when you got those guys, and when you got a hater in the house, and you're worried about, Craig Counsell made comments to the winter meetings about, well, we made a decision based on financial future. Like, that bothers me as a fan, because when we're paying $40 for parking, that happened to me this year, $40 for parking, $35 to sit in the nosebleeds, $150 just to bring my family into the ballpark. But I do it without question. And I spend the money at the pro shop. I'm buying the kids the $35 stuffed bear that I could find for $5 at Walmart, because this is my team. I love them. I want them to succeed. I want my kids to have the same passion that I share with you and all of you listeners. And I expect the ownership to have that same understanding of, hey, this is going on, throughout our whole fan base. 2.4 million fans came into Miller Park last year, or excuse me, American Family Field, a year after, or 2 years after a pandemic. That's damn good. And that deserves some type of recognition from the ownership. And when your recognition is, we're about to go, we signed Andrew McCutchen and that almost broke the bank, or whatever he said. I mean, that irked me. That rubbed me wrong as a fan the wrong way. I didn't like that. Is that overreaction? Maybe. But I, as a fan, expect more.
Yeah. No, I mean, I see where I mean, I'm a fan myself. I see that side of things as a fan. I just think that the front office and Mark Antanasio are doing things that in 5 years that we may look back and say, okay, I'm glad we didn't make that deal. So sometimes it's the deal that they don't make.
Sure.
Because, if you do look back at some of these deals that we all wanted to have happen, I can't even put my finger on one of them at this point, but it's like, okay, you just have to be a little bit patient. Like, sometimes I get it. Look, I get it. I don't want to, I think Mark probably gets that same idea and that same thought. I think they're trying to make the best decisions to have sustained success. And I know that maybe, and I think even Stearns even he's quoted in saying, like, maybe I, should have done a couple of things a little bit differently in the lead up to that deal, even though they probably would have made the deal anyway, or even the aftermath of that deal, like in terms of communication and in the way that the optics of that thing all went down with the Josh Hader thing. So I think they're trying to do the best job and have that sustained success, because look, at the end of the day, as fans, if we're the Tampa Bay Rays in like the next 12 years, just have a playoff caliber team every single year, and we never have to suffer like the Cincinnati Reds. I'm sorry, like, I called 4 games color for them. Purgatory. I just felt bad for them. I felt bad for everybody in the stadium. I think the Brewers are trying to avoid that the best they can. So I hear what you're saying, Brandon. I hear the sentiments of the fans. I just think that the Brewers and Mark and Matt and David, they're just trying to avoid being the Reds. Like, I think they probably have a poster on their wall in their office. Don't be the Reds. Like, let's avoid being the Reds. It's hard to watch those games.
Before we wrap up, and we went over the time that I told you we were going to go, but that's okay, because I could talk Brewers forever with you.
Yeah, me too.
Do you think, real quick, like a 5-second answer, the Brewers, do they extend? I won't even get to Corbin Burns right now, because that'll just fire me back up from 2 days ago. Do they extend Willie? Do they extend Brandon? One of the two. Great name, by the way. But do they get to one of those two?
I think those, for me, those are. If they could extend one of those guys, I think that would be outstanding. Now, again, I don't know what level they're going to be able to go to. I think they could probably do one. And then I think the Brewers have 2 years of this window left with Burns and with Woodruff. I think the Brewers have a real shot at this thing this year. I think we'll see what happens, but I think they're trying to add. And my guess is they're trying to add talent up and down this lineup. And again, they have the currency to do so. And they have the young guys that are going to perform this year. I'm excited for this year. So, but okay, I'm on my soapbox too.
We're gonna put a pin. I'm gonna put a pin in that last.
Yeah.
One of the last things you said. Ready to compete this year because the Cardinals have made moves. Chicago signed Cody Bellinger. They're in talks with a number of free agents. We'll see where they go. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on the division. We got plenty of time for that. You're going to join me throughout the year. You guys can look forward to hearing Vinny. Real quick, Vinny, anywhere else anybody can find you on Twitter? Anything else that you're doing over there in the TV world?
Yeah, no, just at Vinny Rottino. I'm on Twitter, and then I'm on the pre and post game show for Bally Sports Wisconsin. I'm joining the broadcast as well, doing color analysis for the Brewers, and you can find me there.
Perfect. Thank you, Vinny. Thank you guys, all of you guys, for making this podcast part of your daily routine. Again, I know everybody has busy schedules. I appreciate you guys tuning in and listen to me and Vinny and all the other cast of characters I'll have on the show rattle off about our Milwaukee Brewers. Don't forget, you can find the Locked On Brewers podcast everywhere you get podcasts. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube. Hit that subscribe, hit that like, hit that follow button. Just search at Locked On Brewers. Thank you for making Locked On Brewers your first listen. For your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Coming up next week, number one, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And if you're listening to this podcast Friday morning, good morning, happy Friday. It is Friday, as I like to call it. I am going to continue to take at the look at the offseason for our Milwaukee Brewers, and I will be joined by another former Brewer next week. Stay tuned for that announcement. Stay tuned for that episode. You are not going to want to miss it. But again, have a wonderful weekend, everybody. And as always, go Brewers.